Welcome to the Rant Live. Welcome to the Rant Live, everybody. It's Friday, January 7th, and it's been 3 weeks since you guys have heard from us. So sorry if it's, it's been, those were back in the days when I had COVID during our last broadcast. I didn't let everyone know that, but now that I've actually recovered and am alive, I can just tell everyone I survived, and it was very inconsequential, except for the being locked up for, well, that was before they went down to 5 days. So I was stuck being locked down for 10.
Woo!
But and then so, but now we're back. So now things are, Christmas is gone, New Year's is gone. How did your Christmas and New Year's go? Mine was good, and really not a lot happened.
Yeah. Not a whole lot. It was like warm and rainy, and now it's very, very cold.
Okay.
I cracked open, I had my bottle of Dark Lord variant, my chemtrail mix that I cracked open.
Cool.
So that was like a long time coming. It's pretty good.
Good.
So that was fun. Yeah. Didn't do a whole lot, and mostly took a lot of time to hang out and do very little, which I think was kind of nice. I actually slept in a couple days. That was fun. So
it's always nice having just a little bit of time off.
It's really weird because when I was younger, I used to sleep hell, when I was a teenager, even in college, there'd be days when you partied on Friday night or Saturday or whatever, and you could sleep till noon the next day and didn't give a shit. You'd wake up and it's lunchtime. And now I'm like, if it's past 8 o'clock and I'm still in bed, something in my brain is like, why are you still, you should be doing something. Why haven't you done anything? What if you not, you got something to write, you got something to edit, you got what's going on? And then my brain starts working. I just can't go back to sleep. So I'm like, well, fuck it, I guess I got to wake up now. So
yeah, I think that happens when you get older, unfortunately. But I've slept in a little bit, done some things like that. I'm back down in St. Martin, so I've got beach hat and stuff like that on, and but it's not cold here. It's warm here actually, and that's nice. So
it's 13 here, but the sun is out, so
okay.
It's got to be. I'm in my.
That's cold, dude.
Yeah,
I don't even know that cold.
I'm in my basement. There's no way it's even 60 degrees down here in the basement. There's no way. I have the house, and I keep it, we got the little thermostat set and the automatic, the smart thermostat or whatever. But I keep it 63. We keep it pretty. Which
in the house?
Yeah, in the house it's 63.
Dude, that's cold. So you got a jacket and jeans on all the time.
Well, but if I crank it up higher, it was 3 when I woke up this morning. So to keep your house 60 degrees warmer than what it is outside, it takes a little bit of effort, right? And we've got, and I don't remember we talked about, I think we did talk about this on here a while back when it happened. We've got a brand new furnace, brand new air conditioner, brand new windows, all that went, it all
Crank
went
that baby.
Shit. Yeah, well, and it's a dual stage, 96% efficiency. It's probably, I could probably put it to 70 and it would cost me less, than what it took with the drafty ass windows and the old, the 80% deal before. But I'm like, I live in the Midwest, man. I've got hoodies for days. I can put on a coat. We got big old blankets. I'm good. But down
you got fireplace,
yeah, but then that thing is just you might as well just throw money into it's a gas log. So you might as well just take your money and start throwing it in there to crank it up even more.
Yeah.
Because it'll actually my parents have one, and so and they had one at their old house too, but they would crank that thing up and it would be 85 degrees in it's one big room. It used to be 2 rooms, but it was 85 in there. And then you walk out and you're like, oh fuck, it's 60 in the rest of the house because where
you don't want to leave that room.
Right. Because you don't want to be in it because they're older. Right. So they're cool with it. Their house might be 75 degrees. I'm sweating my balls off when I'm over at their house. And it's not even coming. And then you leave. You're like, oh my God, what happened? You get a cold because of the change in temperature from one room to the other. But no, it's but I'm in the basement. Then our main floor is where the thermostat is. The other issue with cranking it up is all our bedrooms are on the second floor. Right. And then our bedroom has kind of a vaulted ceiling. And so, yeah, you could get to the point where okay, let me crank it up to 68. Well, then it's gonna be like 75 upstairs. You know what I mean? And because the thermostat is downstairs, so if it thinks it's 68, you're gonna be like on the 9th level of hell as you move up because all that air is just gonna sit up there. And so no, I'm good with it. But it is a bit chilly here in the basement right now, which is
imagine.
good because
Actually,
I have a lot of
really
beer out of the fridge. I don't even need to put the beer in the fridge. At least not my
stays cold.
Yeah, not the stouts, like the barrel aged stuff. You don't want that to get too cold anyway. So it's perfect drinking temperature down here right now.
Just leave it down there.
It's like a cellar. You know what I mean? It's like a cave.
It's like a wine. You can tell people it's a cellar. You could call it a cellar, and legitimately,
absolutely,
it's pretty damn near.
It sounds a hell of a lot fancier than just like I just have my shit sitting on the floor over here in the between a table and a couch. It's a little dark, but it's cold. So
cellar. It's in the cellar.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we actually have a wood burning fireplace at my home in Arizona, and we actually burn lots of fires in the fireplace. Wood's freaking expensive this year, but it doesn't ever get down to 13 in Phoenix. It gets to like I don't know, like maybe 40, 35. But yeah, so then it gets real warm. But we're kind of like ones for warmth anyways, being in Arizona, so. Anyways, as you can tell, everybody who's listening and watching, not a lot going on in the world of baseball these days because, let's see. There was a lockout that happened on December 1st at midnight. That was 2021. And since then, nothing has happened. Literally nothing. And in fact, there are absolutely there's word that there's still nothing going on. They're not negotiating whatsoever, that there's zero movement between either side. They're literally not even talking, and they may not talk until the end of the month. So what we did is we started a new community through Cubs Insider on a Discord. So for those of you who do or do not know what Discord is, it's kind of like a chat website. It's pretty cool. It's really popular with the kids these days. So, we thought we'd start up a Discord channel, and we did that. And there's a link to that in the description down below. So if you guys want to join that Discord chat, go ahead and jump on in there. And it's been pretty cool. I mean, I actually dig it. It's kind of like a real-time conversation. And then you can kind of control, not that we need to, but to the extent you get a douchebag in there, you can kick them out. Which we haven't had that happen yet, but unlike Facebook and Twitter, you don't have to live with the trolls of the world. You can kind of moderate it, and the conversation that's been going on over there has been really cool because it's really baseball-y. It's not about politics or just the stupidness of the world. It's been around the Cubs. It's been some good conversation. Have you peeked in there, Evan?
I did a little bit. I commented on the Wrigley neighborhood stuff, and I think a couple other things. It's I don't know if it's my brain or what. I have to adjust to like the way Discord kind of displays things and the way you can comment. Like I don't have a good feel for it yet. And I do it on mobile. And maybe that's the problem. I don't even know if you can access Discord on the actual computer. I just use it on my. Okay. Yeah, so maybe that would help. Because I've only ever done it on mobile. I have it for a couple, like Mustard, which is the Tom House app. Like there's a Discord channel for that. And so I've used it for that before. But in terms of actually interacting, I'm not very adept at it yet. But no, I think the cool thing with that though is as you said, we can kind of limit it, or we can, remove people, but it's not like Twitter in which you're just going to have a bunch of randos jumping in from all kinds of other, or you don't have to go through and kind of curate. Oh gosh, am I going to have to scroll through? Oh, it's January 6th. Well, let's look at all the discourse on that. Oh, hey, here's a Cubs take. But you can get in there. It's like, okay, this is specifically for that community that we want to kind of build up. And I think one thing that might be interesting from that, we talked about this a little bit, was the idea of, not that this would necessarily be part and parcel, but I think there's a cool idea of like Patreon and other sort of fan funded and fan centric stuff. Like the King Cast is my favorite non-rant outside podcast, right? And they have a really, really robust Patreon deal. Like every Friday they have a Patreon only podcast release, and there's like different discounts they'll give on their merch and things like that. So, I do think there's a really cool option there to where, hey, this is specifically something that we're able to drive, that's our fans, it's away from the other social media stuff. And what I think is cool, and Patreon's neat, whatever, but I'd prefer to maybe have our own kind of, this will be redundant, ownership of if we wanted to do something with our fans and for our fans and say, hey, we'd like to do maybe an extra episode of the show that's only for, a group of patrons, right? But we don't have to go through somebody else to facilitate that. So I think there's some cool opportunities that Discord would present to us that like Twitter and Facebook and things like that would not. So that's neat.
At the end of the day, so you wrote a post about blockchain, and we won't get into the nuts and bolts of all that stuff, but at the end of the day, really what blockchain is about kind of this idea behind decentralization, kind of a democratizing how things that are currently centralized, think Google, Facebook, things like that, and the current internet, where you don't really have much control over your content. I mean, if Facebook wanted to or Twitter wanted to tomorrow, they could take our account away and we would be able to do nothing about it. Where we've got, we spend a lot of time building those people on those social channels, curating all that and just kind of, building up our following there. And knowing that at any time they could pull the plug. Will they? No, of course not. Because if they started doing that, then people would leave those channels. But knowing that you don't really kind of own that stuff and can't control it is kind of the heart and soul behind and really the impetus behind why you do something like Discord, because you can actually control it a lot more. You can just do some fun things with it. And so, so to the extent that we will, as that community continues to build and people become engaged, and I think, Evan, from your perspective, where you're saying, you kind of got to get a feel for it, I think the more you engage in the conversation and the more you stay in the flow of the conversation, the easier it becomes to use. So I'm always checking it, and just like, I'm not a Twitter guy, as I'm sure you know, but with Discord, if you just quickly go in there and see, what are they talking about? Either, you want to leave a comment or you don't. And you just kind of get into the flow of what the conversation is. Right now, we don't have that many. So the way it works is in Discord, it's called a server. That's kind of the community. And then within the community, within the server, you've got channels. So we've got the stadium as our main channel, and that's where the main conversation goes on. I've created a couple other channels, Cubs prospects, rumors, game chat, which we'll utilize once the games start up, and player news, and then blockchain and sports. To the extent that people actually want to have conversations about that stuff, we can do it separately. But the stadium is that main channel that people can go and just kind of talk about whatever. And then if you want to, you can kind of break off into the separate channels as well. So if it works that way, then that's great. And if it doesn't, we can change it up. So anybody who wants to come over there and kind of say hi to us, I'm there all the time. Eventually, Evan will be there all the time because we'll get him hooked. And then
we'll see what happens. Yeah, but I like the game chat stuff too, because and again, look, there's plenty of people who at one point were randos who became my friends, and maybe that'll be the case over here. But it's like you get in, and I feel like Twitter gets so judgy at times too, where it's like you'll put something out there and then somebody will just jump in like they've got no idea what they don't know you, they don't understand that you're making a joke, and then they completely just go nuts on everything. And it's like, dude, let me sidebar into this. There's actually, this is Cubs related ish, and it was I wrote something the other day just about the idea of whether a reunion with Nick Castellanos or Kyle Schwarber was possible, right? And I made it fairly clear in there that it was highly unlikely on either front, right? Like I think Schwarber's impossible. I don't think that could possibly happen, simply because I think his market is actually a little bit better than Castellanos's, simply because Schwarber's probably not looking for 7 or 8 years, and he's younger. But But I think there's too much pride on this. Like, I think Schwarber wants to continue to rub the Cubs' faces in it to an extent, right? To them non-tendering him. And I think for the Cubs, it would be, and for Jed Hoyer, it would be exceedingly bad. I don't know that I think he's got enough pride or ego that he doesn't want to be like, yeah, we non-tendered this guy. Now we're going to give him this huge contract a year later. Like, I just don't.
That would just look bad. That's just a bad look.
But the thing with Castellanos that I said is like, okay, it won't happen, or it probably won't happen, but it could if he's not getting. He's not going to get 8 years, right? Like, I'll gladly eat my words if that happens, because that was hilarious when I first saw that. I was like, nobody's giving him 8 years. But let's say his market doesn't develop, something happens there, maybe it goes past June, and if the Cubs really went big, like they don't get Correa, and they say, we're cool spending a bunch of money on somebody per year for a very short period. So they say, we'll give you $30 million a year for 3 years. Now, is that overpaying for him? Absolutely it is. But that's kind of the whole idea.
It depends on how you look at it, though. Like,
right.
People tend to say AAV is the ultimate determinant in terms of whether you're overpaying for somebody, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I mean, there are years involved. There's the risk involved. There's the total contract.
Yeah.
It's not just AAV.
And he's still relatively young, right? So you're talking about, if they were to do that, say, hey, you're trying to get 125 million or whatever, 115 million is probably what he's trying to get. We'll give you 90 for 3 years. They're out of it in 3 years. That's the real problem. The problem is not the amount of money. The problem is the amount of years. That's what Jed Hoyer has said, right? So I've said, and he could look at it and say, well, you know what? Gosh, I'll be going into my age 33 season after that. I could still get some more money. Yeah, I can see. Again, I did not put this out there as I did not say the Cubs should do this. I'm saying the only way a reunion probably happens is this. And then I've got somebody in there like, oh, that's overpaying him. I can't believe it. Blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, bear in mind, like, again, you might see it that way, but the Cubs have said they're comfortable with higher AAVs at shorter periods. They've actually said that. That's kind of how it worked with Marcus Stroman. They made that work, and this is something where it could possibly be there.
Yeah, no one saw the Stroman signing coming.
Right, and then but this person who keeps commenting is like, "But you did." I said, "No, I didn't make it." And they're like, "Well, we can agree to disagree." I'm like, "No, we can't." Like, first of all, I hate that. Agree to disagree. Like, we can't agree to disagree because that indicates an opinion. I did not offer an opinion. I said, here is a way that this happened. Like, it's unlikely, but here's a path that could make it happen. I'm not saying it should happen. If I said it should happen, that's an opinion. You can disagree with me, right? It's like, I'm not offering this up. You are misinterpreting something that I said. Now, see, I am telling you what I said. I am clarifying it for you.
This right here is the value of getting Evan over on Discord. You see, there's endless entertainment possibilities.
Yeah. I guess, but
involved in the conversation.
But there, I think where I'm getting at is it bothers me to no end when people are like, well, we can just disagree. That's your opinion. That's just my opinion. Like, no, when you state something as a fact, when you say this is what this is, it ceases becoming an opinion. You are saying this is fact. You are stating that. You're not saying, well,
and then we get, like, we're not even talking about this, and we get a comment that says,
no shit,
not coming back to the Cubs. Well, that's not even part of the conversation.
We haven't talked about Chris Bryant. I was talking about Nicholas Castellanos.
Again, see, like, but here in StreamYard, I can actually ban this person. I won't.
Don't ban them. Don't ban Michael. I think he's.
And then we've got another question that says, "Are you guys leaving Facebook?"
I would, as much as I would like to.
I'd love to.
If Facebook didn't drive so much traffic, it would be wonderful to not be there anymore.
Let's put it this way. We are building a path to one day leave Facebook. That much is true.
Yeah, that would be nice. But I just, like I said, that's my pet peeve. It's just like, it's not difficult to discern fact and opinion. Or if you are stating a fact, if it is an opinion, don't state it as if it's a fact. And if I clarify it for you, then stop trying to tell me that we can't disagree on a fact, right? That's not the way it works.
Come on. You've been 5 years.
Well, you can just believe it's not true.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's cold outside. No, it's not. No,
You
it
know,
really is
yeah,
cold. That's just the way. Agree to disagree. No, we're not going to agree.
But I mean, if you're from the North Pole, it's not that cold. Come on.
Yeah.
So
Oh
let me
man.
So listen, I mean, so obviously what we've done is moved a little bit, kind of like I said, we're creating a new path for ourselves where people can come be a part of a community that's outside of the poison and the toxic environment that Facebook and Twitter have become. It's nurtured by us, it's owned by us. I mean, not necessarily owned or anything, but and then we will be able to offer and do different, more creative things through our Discord channel. So join us over there. Link down in the description. Something else that I wanted to talk about quickly is just the current state of Major League Baseball. The fact that it's like every time the owners and the players get into a conversation that has anything to do literally almost any conversation. It doesn't matter what it has to do with, because it always has to do with money. And we can go back to any CBA conversation. We can go back to when COVID happened in 2020 and they tried to, kind of get everybody back on the same page. And we were looking at all the different proposals that the owners were putting out there. And at the end of the day, the value of every single proposal they put out was exactly the same, even though they tried to make it seem like they were actually giving different proposals. They tried to massage people and convince them, through their public relations.
I would like to get a massage.
I would too. That what they were doing is they were saying, hey, all right, we'll give you here, we'll give you this, we'll give you that. But the value of the proposal was always the same. They really weren't changing the dollars and cents. And so now we're in a position where, again, there's a lockout. I think there's a lot of discontent from fans. There's obviously a lot of discontent from players about the owners and the way the owners are going about things, which is they're absolutely not doing anything right now. What is the state of Major League Baseball?
I think it's located in New York. No, but I mean, right now it's a state of disrepair. It's a state of discontent. But it's somebody was asking me about this, earlier, and they're like, when are they going to get together? I'm like, well, what you have to consider is that the owners, the league, made the decision to lock players out, to immediately preemptively strike with a lock. Well, strike would be the wrong term there. To preemptively lock the players out at 12:01, the moment or the minute after the CBA expired, right? And so that is an aggressive move. They called it defensive, right?
Yeah,
which is stupid.
They said they had to.
You can't strike. We'll lock you out. Like you can't.
Yeah.
Fire me, I quit.
Exactly. You can't break up with me. I break up with you.
Yeah. Like, wait, what? But at this point, though, the owners have locked the players out, and therefore the onus is on them to come to the table with something. But again, they're freezing, like literally they're trying to do, they're cutting off supply chains. It's like the war effort, and if you can cut off the supply chain, if you can cut off the railroads, if we're going all the way back, Civil War wise, and you can not get supplies in, well, then eventually, and I think that's what they're looking at. The owners are trying to look at this and say, well, if we can starve the players out, well, I mean, obviously nothing's going to happen until, I wonder if they realize, like, hey, dumbass, like, let's, if you starve out your players, that's the product right there. We'll show you. Yeah, it's like, hey, you don't make money if they're not playing either. And I think I just don't believe the owners are quite in touch with things very well. Although at the same time, it remains like, even in that Jeff Passan piece, and he covered a lot of different things in there about the impasse and all that. But people on both sides of it are still at the same point when they're thinking about mid-February, right? Which is what we heard well before all this stuff, that everybody still, I still maintain that there's this idea that they're kind of being petty. And I don't want to, like, the players to an extent, like I firmly side with the players, but at the same time, I also feel like there is a bit of pettiness in terms of like not willing to just sit down at the table to an extent, right? This is 100% on the owners, because they don't want to sit down either. But it is like kind of that, you're fired. No, I quit. No, you're fired. No, I quit.
But I mean,
But
let's see. The owners, they're at a different level than the players. Okay. The players are simply athletes, right? So the owners are multi-billion-dollar businessmen. They sit at negotiation tables. They deal with lawyers all the time. They understand how the process of a negotiation works. Players don't know this at all. And so where you have one side of the equation that's in the negotiations, literally clueless about how negotiations works. Now, of course, they've got attorneys. The Major League Baseball Players Association have their attorneys, but the owners have a better understanding of how a negotiation works. And that's why they end up winning most of the time. But also something that we need to draw attention to here is that the reason that this works is because there's antitrust protection in Major League Baseball. I'll hit on this every single time. You're not going to see a strike in any other sport. When was the last, or not a strike, but a lockout? I mean, when was the last time you had a work stoppage in another sport?
Hockey a couple years ago.
Yeah. And outside of that, that was like what, 5-10 years ago?
Something like that.
Yeah, well, a long time.
I do want to point out, like Bruce Meyer, who's the players negotiator, like he's sharp. I think like they are much better set to succeed, or to at least not get the wool pulled over their eyes completely when they let Tony Clark kind of run things 5 years ago, which is just disastrous for the players. Yeah. But I think the issue with on the players side of things is you got guys like, and this is where again, and this comes down to some optics for fans as well, right? When you have Max Scherzer as kind of one of the as a mouthpiece, like I get it, and like he's very well respected, but it's really difficult to curry a whole lot of favor or to build a lot of rapport with fans when you got a dude who just got like a $42 million a year deal being the one like, we're getting screwed. Yeah, we got to fight back, and then fans looking at like, the fuck, you just got
that's
a record
kind of
deal.
the problem too, right?
Right.
That's the guy who people are going to listen to. Only the people, you're not going to have some scrub who's making $500,000 a year that's going to gain any attention from the media.
Right. And those are the, and really, like I was talking to somebody about this the other day, is you want to talk about the guys who really get stuck in the middle of all this, right? So you've got the elite, you're looking at Correa's probably, he's going to get like $35 million a year. And you're looking at Mike Trout, you look at Lindor, you look at Scherzer.
30 players max.
Right. And they're all making that. And then you've got, 60% of the league is guys on league minimum, like $700,000 or less. The trouble then comes in because so owners now are saying, we're cool paying you $40 million a year because we'll subsidize you with league minimum guys. But then who really gets screwed is the dude who's like 32, 33, 34, who would be making $2 to $5 million a year. So, well, you're not good enough for us to pay a ton of money to, and you're not cheap enough for us to keep you to subsidize Mike Trout. And so, I do wonder, and we're seeing baseball get younger and younger and younger. The age curve has continued to change. Part of that has to do with no more PEDs or not as prevalent and not as rampant because, when you can keep juicing and hit 70 home runs when you're 40 years old, it's a little bit different. But I do like that. But that's where I say, like, that's what kind of sucks is that you're losing a lot of that middle ground. That's the part of the game where it's eroding because those players eventually they're going to get squeezed out by the way the economics are working. And I think those are the guys who need to really step up and be like, hey, and if we can kind of squeeze it, they want to make that money earlier, give a little bit to those younger guys and the guys who are more in the middle. And I totally get that, but it's the optics are bad from a fan perspective when you look out because they see the owners are able to leverage that so much more easily. We spent $2 billion in free agency in November. That's a record. It's like, well, yeah, it's a record because everybody knew they had to sign before December 1st. That doesn't all get done in November.
Listen, the guys that got signed are guys that were going to get signed no matter what. And so the owners really knew, hey, let's go out and be aggressive here because we can use this as leverage in our negotiations, kind of our public relations efforts, makes us look good. We spent all this money. And now these greedy players who got all this money from us, which was like 10 players, basically, forget about all the, couple hundred other players, and that's where it kind of gets off the rails. As a fan, though, I mean, you really feel powerless. And that's the thing that to me is frustrating is that, and even as players, they probably feel a little powerless, but as a fan, listen, we're the ones who fund the sport. Okay. Without the fans, there is no revenue. None. Zero. Okay. The reason that there's revenue is because the fans are watching and are paying. They're either paying by watching a commercial and that advertising revenue goes to the teams, or we're paying to go to a game and we're paying to buy a refreshment, a beer, chips, or whatever, jerseys, things like that. All the money in Major League Baseball comes from fans. And yet we're so powerless. And that's kind of the thing that, I mean, for me, at least 2022 and beyond, hopefully, is going to be the year of the people who drive the revenue taking back a little bit of control. How that happens, who knows, right? But at the end of the day, it's frustrating from a fan's perspective. And it's why baseball continues to lose fans, because you have a sport that every single opportunity they get to have a conversation about money, they argue and they disagree, and it becomes this big public relations thing. And it's just frustrating. I don't know. It's always frustrating.
It is. And the thing is, like, we've seen similar. I mean, look, the NFL and the NBA, I understand they operate, the financial structures are different, but those leagues both give a higher percentage of the revenue to players, and the split is more equitable, and the cap is based on revenue in football, right? So baseball, I know, doesn't have a cap, but there are restrictions in place there.
Yeah,
there are floors in there, but there's also carve outs to where, like in the NBA and the Larry Bird exemption and things like that, you've got veteran carve outs and different things, veterans exemptions, where you have a cap, but you can get around certain things. Like, they've been able to structure that in a certain way, and it just in Major League Baseball, the owners have been far more steadfast in terms of continually wanting to not only keep a bigger piece of the pie, but in putting in rules or putting in other things to prevent players from really growing that. And and they'll do these things, and the stuff that is transparent is the TV rights, things like that we see about, and they consistently want to do things that, again, kind of freeze the players out and reduce that. And I just think, look, if my percentage of the pie remains the same, but the pie gets bigger over time, I'm going to get more pie. But the owners aren't happy with that. They're like, we want a bigger pie and a larger percentage of it. And it's like, it'd be a lot easier if you just said, hey, we'll do a 50-50 split on the revenue. And there was a little bit of that they sort of tried to implement, but as you mentioned, they were doing it in a roundabout way. And the other problem is we don't actually know what the real size of the pie is. And with the antitrust and the fact that only one team even has any public ownership, they never have to tell us how much money they're actually making. And, that makes it difficult. But again, the average MLB player makes less than what their counterparts in other sports make, despite the fact that they play 162 games, right? Like, that's a lot. And the rosters aren't as big as, I get it, NFL 16, 17 games now. There's differences, but it more comes down to percentages, and Major League Baseball owners are kind of stodgy with that. And it's just, if you break it down that way, you stop looking at what the top guys make, and you take away the amount, because I think that's a big stumbling block for a lot of people who can look at it and say, even if you're just a league average guy who just busted in and you're making $600,000, like, that's the kind of money that, most people would be life altering. Like, you can make $600,000 for a year and then never work again, depending on where you live. Right. I mean, or, you work for a couple of years, like, hell, you get a rookie deal, you play for 6 years. Like, most people could retire on that, be done, if they spent more frugally. And that's very difficult for someone who's maybe working as a public school teacher. Maybe they're garbage man. You know what I mean? Maybe they're an electrician. I don't know. And they see that, like, I bust my ass for how long a day for this thankless job. You're making $500,000 to be a bench player. And so I understand, like, how that's difficult for people. But what you have to understand is, though, relatively speaking, as a part of, if you're part of IBEW or you're part of a teachers union, like, your union is fighting on your behalf to make sure that your benefits are fair relative to the job that you do and the services that you provide. And so if you look at that and then now you apply that to baseball, you say, hey, the baseball union is simply trying to ensure that the labor conditions with which they work in their industry, which is not comparable to being a teacher, it's not comparable to being a plumber, it's comparable to being a blogger and a podcast, because we are both exceedingly wealthy as a result of this stuff.
Oh yeah,
But you have to remove
on a bed of money.
Yeah, right. Like I wiped my ass.
But
I wiped my ass with $100 bill earlier, just because I could. And it wasn't very comfortable, but I did it because I'm so rich. But
talk to your friend.
You have to remove all these. Well, but my job, I would do, but that's not your job. You're not an elite athlete, and that's a whole different industry, right? So take that and say they are simply trying to fight to either maintain or, in this case, to gain back some of what they feel are their rights that they have earned and some of what they feel are the proper labor conditions, given the parameters of their job, of their industry. So if people start paying $100 a seat to watch your virtual, like if my wife's a school counselor, obviously, certain things you couldn't share, but if people were paying $100 a ticket and 40,000 people were showing up to watch her counsel kids, then I think she could probably argue for higher pay, right? If that were happening and she were generating $10 billion a year for her school district, then we'd be on level playing field, so to speak. But I think that's what fans need to try to look at, is don't take it like they're already making X, they should be happy, shut up and play. That's not really the way that works.
Is there, so like, I asked, like, how do we get out of this situation? But like, is there a situation, and I'm just thinking out loud, is there a situation where it'd make more sense for the players to be the ones that own the franchises? Let's say you become a player, and the moment you become a player, you get an ownership of and forget owners, right? And let's just say that's the way the entity is structured. Maybe there's a board, who knows? But at the end of the day, those players, if you're on that team, you get a percentage of the profits of that team, and then maybe you get some type of pension afterwards. But there is no owner, so to speak. So there is no one person who's just looking out for himself. It's now a collection of the players that are looking out for themselves and for the people that are going to come up behind them, right? I mean, like, I just think conceptually, like, the whole concept of these big, rich billionaires owning these teams, it doesn't benefit the sport in any way.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you ever seen basketball? Because it didn't work out real well there.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's that's what you want to put on your research log, but
I'm just saying, man, they eventually it came back around. But I think there's a troublesome thing about human nature that I think in order to you'd have to democratize it to such an extent, which I think is more possible with quote unquote regular folks. But I think that's where it becomes difficult. Then does that mean Mike Trout has a greater ownership stake and therefore can make this, which was kind of what we already see, and I think it was a LeBron, somebody the other day, they were like, superstars, apparently, new reports that superstars have input over personnel decisions on teams. Like, no shit. LeBron's getting coaches hired and fired for the last 20 years. What are you, really? Yeah. Like, now you come out with this, like, study says beer makes you drunk if you have too many. Oh, oh God, the last half of my life, more than half now, it's finally been explained.
It was a little cloudy there for a while.
Yeah, well, it still is. But no, I mean, I think there's, there's, I think something that would be there, of course, at the other time, like it would all have to go that way, right? Because damn well they don't, like, those owners don't want to have somebody in there who's going to tell the truth, who's going to spill the beans on how much is actually being made or not made.
Therein lies the problem. But we all see the valuations and we all see what the teams are sold for, bought and sold for. So I mean, that's really the writing on the wall. I mean, what happens behind, the golden wall, I don't think is as significant as what goes on, in front of the curtain.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is something like I've joked about this, or actually, I think we talked about this. Like Danny Rocket jokes about that, right? Says, well, if we could just get 1 billion Cubs fans to throw in $3 a piece, right? Or 1 million Cubs fans to throw in $100 a piece, or whatever, and then, well, there'd only be 100 million, $1,000 a piece, right? Now we have $1 billion. Go to Tom Ricketts, say we would like to buy a minority stake in the Cubs, and we're gonna have some input. We'll be on the board, we'll be, but it's like, but we want access to your books. We don't need to make personnel decisions. We just want to see what your books are. And as much as I think Tom Ricketts would love that $1 billion in liquidity, do you think he wants to show anybody outside of his family what that team's actually making and where the finances actually, like, that's the thing that's kind of interesting, because you start thinking, like, that's the real key. There's a reason the owners never cracked open their books when it came to the 2020 negotiations, because there's a shit ton more that's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That obviously, of course, we've discussed that before, but I think that's something that is kind of interesting, and it would be unique, certainly, to see someone who came in. I think that was the whole thing. That's why people wanted Mark Cuban, and I think that's why baseball owners did not want Mark Cuban to have anything to do with the Cubs, because I think they felt like he'd be baseball. I think more than any other sport feels like a collection of dudes who all have like wood paneled libraries with mahogany and big leather overstuffed chairs where they sit and drink really expensive scotch and smoke cigars and talk about all the machinations of like world politics that go beyond what we can ever even see on TV. You know what I mean? Like they all feel like this old boys club.
Yeah.
That all gets together and ha ha ha, like generational type of wealth. There's no nouveau riche people in there. And I don't know, it just, baseball feels like that more than any other sport, just much less progressive in those terms. And like, no, we're gonna circle the wagons and protect our own, kind of how it feels.
Yeah, that's how it is. So once we come out of a lockout, as inevitably, what is going to happen? I mean, I think we can talk about what we thought was going to happen, but I think, with there being really no conversations going on, it feels like this could go. It's January 7th right now. If they don't even get to the table by the end of January, there's no way this is going to be, there's going to be an agreement in place in time for spring training to start on time. So let's say it pushes into, March, April, when the conversation or the conversations finalize and they actually can get an agreement. Then you're going to be in a really frenzied period of time where you're going to have a shrunk down spring training. There's going to have to be some type of spring training, although they could try to do what they did when they restarted for COVID, which is try to do it, at the home ballparks, because there comes a point in time where, you can't do it much more into May in Arizona, for example, because it gets so hot. And so there are other issues that are going to start cropping up if this continues to push off. But let's say they get an agreement in place in April, which, do you think that's unrealistic for me to say right now, the way things feel? I don't see them being able to start any type of a season, and I mean preseason, spring training, before April.
I don't think it's unrealistic. I'm still of the opinion, though, that, I still think both sides know damn well I think the owners are very, very, very much playing coy. I'm not saying they're not serious about trying to screw over the players, but I do think, I'm going to continue to stick with this until I'm proven wrong. The owners did what they did for a reason, and it's not purely to try to instigate this really frenzied period and get a lot of hype around the season and get good publicity. But there's a reason everybody keeps saying mid-February. I don't know if they try to put a deadline on it or whatever, but I think they're going to do whatever they can to try to get some form or fashion of spring training in. Just because it would be, it's such a suicide pill to let that thing run into the regular season and pull that back. I mean, unless the owners want a shorter regular season, which I can't imagine they would want unless they do expanded playoffs as a part of that. I mean,
well, now,
there's
the
two
hard
ways to
thing with
look at
that
it.
is if you start to leak into the season, that it's kind of like going past the point of no return, right? It's like you're already, once you're there, it becomes a lot easier to stretch it beyond. And we've seen this happen before where both sides then really dig in. And then it really just becomes a complete and utter mess.
Yeah.
We're all thinking it's not going to turn into, but all signs are pointing to it possibly actually going that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll probably hear something, once we get towards this end of the month, we start thinking about it again. I think they're going to try to put like one of those deadlines on it again, right? We saw that a couple summers ago, right? Where they were doing hey, it's got to be done by this. We're going to give a deadline of this, but and if it comes after that, then we're not talking with you anymore, whatever, which, isn't real, but so like February 10th, we need to have this done. Because I mean, if they wanted to lock themselves in a room and figure this stuff all out, they could, and there's a few things in there. Players have made some proposals. I mean, the owners are intentionally just being like, nah, we're not going to listen to you. It's like letting your kid cry himself to sleep. And I'm not saying the owners or the players are crying babies, but I'm saying like the owners are very intentionally ignoring it, right? It's not that they're not hearing it. They're just ignoring it.
Yeah.
And there's not.
Just to see, hey, let's ignore it and see what happens.
We're going to let it go. We're going to let it go. We're going to let it go. Then maybe we'll open some stuff up and figure some things out, right? And so I still want to believe that even the owners are smart enough to understand how badly they'd be shooting themselves in the collective foot to let this thing stretch into the regular season, because it's like, look, man, attendance isn't great, and I know they're making up for a lot of that. Like, that's kind of a tough thing to look at. It's like, attendance today, yeah, but if TV ratings are still a little bit better, because, I mean, shit, dude, high-def TV and the ability to watch some of those games, sit at home and drink cheaper beer. I mean, I didn't go to any games last year. I went to one Cubs game. I went to 3 Major League Baseball games, one of which I was too high to really remember. But like literally I was in Denver. And I was like super tired because we'd had a wedding the day before. But there's this whole thing there where I just think you're going to really, really hurt, and the Cubs are hurting for this already. Because man, you watch look out on the Facebook and Twitter and see how many people have suddenly come up for Cubs season tickets after having been on the waiting list for a while. They're starting.
And the fascinating thing is these people are like debating getting the tickets. They're like, hey, I'm trying to figure out if I should do this.
Yeah, should I? And they're not getting people to want to buy in with them. And I'm like, I mean, I've flat out told a few people I don't think it's worth it, but we've shared that on here. But they're selling half game packages now, right? They're like, and look, that is a sign, if anything, that they are absolutely struggling.
What's a half game package?
The Cubs are selling half game season ticket packages. Or I'm sorry, half season.
Oh, half season. Okay.
Yeah, you go for 4.5 innings and then trade your ticket to somebody.
It's like, how's that work exactly?
Yeah.
Sir, your time is up.
Yeah, you gotta go. Which actually, if it were in LA, you could do that easily.
Yeah.
They already show up in the 2nd or 3rd and leave in the 7th. So I mean, that's the kind of tickets they sell there. No, half season to half of the games, I think is kind of where I was going with that. But that's a sign that they're not moving, right? So not only do you have that, but the Cubs are on marquee, which still isn't in all the markets, which not everybody has access to on their main brand of just their basic cable package, or they don't live in the market and can't get the games. Like, if you're the Cubs and you get late into, if you have to push back any of that seat, like, and you talk about how much money they make from game day, like, Tom Ricketts, as much as anyone, has a very, very vested interest in getting people, because the other thing is, what do we always talk about with Ricketts? Oh, he's got all the development around the ballpark too. Like, he needs to have games. He needs to have people in the stands, and he needs to have people watching his television network. He's got a lot of eggs in this basket, and I don't know, but I don't know that he gets it. We'll see.
He's going to get it when those numbers are low. That's the thing is that you start talking about the debt he has in and around the ballpark, specifically Hotel Zachary. And Dude, business people aren't coming to that hotel to have business meetings. The only reason that hotel exists is in support of the Chicago Cubs. There's nothing else in that neighborhood to do. There's no other reason for people to stay in a hotel in that part of town. It
Right.
is simply about the Chicago Cubs. And so they've got corporate people who are buying suites and, bringing people and like giving them the Wrigley experience and oohing and ahhing them. And it's like the adult Disneyland. But at the end of the day, that's going to start to wear off if they continue to have losing seasons. And that's where Ricketts knows he's going to have to put something together, because if listen, not having people in Wrigley is one thing, but not having people in Wrigley and Hotel Zachary and the buildings and the businesses around Wrigley,
And not watching Marquee and not
yeah,
generating any money from that thing, which was supposed to have been a cash cow.
yeah, it's like,
We're a few
yeah.
years in now. We're heading into the third year for Marquee. This is when it's supposed to start turning a profit, a big profit. Wheelbarrows of money aren't showing up, man.
He literally put all of his eggs in one basket. And the thing is that then he screwed himself by limiting what the Cubs did. I'm not going to say he drove Theo Epstein out of town, but he limited him. He made it so that he, couldn't do everything he probably wanted to do in terms of signing, pieces that could complement other players that were on the team. Actually ended up getting rid of all the players. I mean, so where we are right now is like, it's kind of a dangerous area if you're Tom Ricketts, I would say, because he's really kind of losing some of the fans. This whole CBA kind of lockout thing isn't helping anybody, although it's not his fault directly. And then you've got a team that, granted, they signed Marcus Stroman, but I mean, you kind of almost feel like they literally have to sign Carlos Correa, or you could see how they could feel that way. You could see how he could sell himself on that. Although I'm not sure that's the best move. Just to kind of continue, because you could see it all circling the drain right now, right? I mean, if you don't have a competitive team, what if the Cubs came out and they were like the worst team in the Central?
Dude, it would be, especially like it. What if it stretches it? And you're talking about, what if the season doesn't start till May? They miss a month of the season, and the Cubs suck. Like, that would be. But I want, before I forget this though, I wanted to go back on my analogy of like the old boys club being in there. Do you get the sense that Tom Ricketts, because it's Papa Joe's money, really? Like, Papa Joe is the patriarch of the Ricketts family, and the kids are just allowed to run it as this hobby. Do you get the sense that like he's the snot-nosed brat of that group? Like the real adults are there in the cool room playing, and then when Tommy gets in there and he wants to pour himself some of the McAllen, like he gets his hand slapped and says he can, you can go have the monkey shoulder. You know what I mean? Like, you get to go drink the $25 scotch. You're not getting any of this. You can go chew on some bubble gum, Tommy. You don't get a cigar. Like, I don't feel like he's probably got a whole lot of sway among that ownership group. If you look at those 30 owners, yeah. I don't know that Tom Ricketts is the one that's out there being able to really cheerlead anything, because I mean, look, he's in a major market anyway, right? And they're like, screw you, dude. Like, we're gonna do what we want. Like, you could piss off. I just, whether even if he wanted the season to start and he's against some of this other stuff, which I don't necessarily believe he is, I don't know that he would really be able, like, he's not Jerry Reinsdorf is what I'm like. Reinsdorf,
yeah, he's not going to get anything done. He's not going to get anything done.
Yeah, he's held sway. I just that's part of it that I think is in there too, where it's like I just wonder how much like he kind of rode this whole thing and is now in this position where he's on a surfboard and there's a big wave coming and he's just hanging on to that thing for dear life. He ain't surfing. He's just hoping he doesn't get.
He's got the little wristband attached.
He's just holding. Stay on, please, God. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe he's orchestrating the whole damn thing. I don't see it that way. I think he's just sitting back and hoping to God that his cash cow starts providing a little bit of milk.
Yeah, I think if it was Joe in there owning the team and being the active kind of owner, it might be a little bit different, because he is kind of like part of the old boys club. So to speak.
I think how much worse could that possibly get though? Like, if it was actually him. Remember all those emails? God, that was fun. Oh,
Probably better. It's probably better that it's not. So yeah, bottom line is baseball is a bit of a mess, but hey, come to our Discord channel. The
yeah.
link is down below. We'll talk about things, baseball things.
It looks like you're pointing at something totally different when you do like that.
But it's down.
Come
It's
on,
I
come on
can't
down below. Come
down
on.
in the description.
If you could just find yourself right down this way.
You're a dirty man.
I've got a Discord for you. It works out like if you're just listening to this, it doesn't really
Yeah, we were pointing and doing
poorly.
all sorts of gestures and things like that. So just use your
For
imagination.
juvenile.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's about it. So, yeah. Another thing that I want to mention with the whole Discord thing is if you come to our website, I've actually put a link. Go to our menu, and there's a join us on Discord little button you can press. So, if you're on the podcast, just go there, check it out, join us, and we can all be friends together. So, not sure when we'll do another one of these things. I mean, I guess we'll kind of see how it goes in terms of the news, but it is a really good time for the name of the show, The Rant Live, for us to be doing exactly that. So we could get on, if you guys like hearing us complain about Major League Baseball and the owners, we could do a couple shows a week doing that. That's easy. So
same show. It's just over and over again yelling about the same shit.
Once we start getting some numbers or anything from the owners, we can certainly start talking about that too. So we'll kind of see how it goes. And until then, have yourselves a fantastic weekend. Stay warm if you're in a cold area, and stay cool if you're in a warm area.
There we go.
Yep. See ya.
See ya.